Welcome back to Mondays with Mom, the podcast where my mom, Leah,
Hi.
and I, Jo, dive into her stories, experiences, and the lessons she's hoping I finally take to heart. My mom has always dreamed of turning her life into a book or a movie, and this podcast is our way of making that dream come true, one episode at a time. Right, Mom?
Right, Joey. Thanks for that. So, Jo, I was thinking about the spam calls you've been telling me you've been getting.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of them recently.
I mean, these days, guys, it's going completely crazy here in Athens. The number of fake SMS messages you're getting, emails and phone calls
Yeah.
claiming
That you've got a delivery, that you've got license fees to pay.
they will find some way of recording your voice on a phone call and then playing it back and telling you that, or playing it back for a family member of yours and telling you that that family member is injured and they need your help, but they can't speak. I mean, it's really getting crazy.
So it's getting out of hand, I think.
So it's kind of reminding me or bringing me back to the good old days where we didn't have to worry about these things. Now, when I say the good old days, I'm kind of talking about, my upbringing, which would have been the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah.
Where
music was great.
Music was actually very great in the 80s. No one will deny that. I mean, they're still making every second song coming out now some 80s remix.
Yeah.
So,
Love
yes,
80s music.
I think nothing can beat the music of the 80s. But there were some things that were good and bad.
So the fashion?
Okay. All right. We're talking about phones at the moment. Remember?
Sorry.
We're talking about spam.
Sorry.
Okay, we're not going to get into knickerbockers and what do they used to call those? Those long T-shirts that you would wear that you would just tie with your hand and then have these like footless tights, as if you were like a combination of going to Pilates and forgot to get dressed. And we actually thought we were really cool at the time, but no, we're not talking about that today.
Yeah, what are we talking about then?
So I was thinking about the days when there was no such thing as Caller ID.
Oh, yeah.
When there was no such thing as a contact list you could have on an app.
Uh-huh.
And things where people's phone numbers were in the phone book.
Yeah, so like if you were out, people couldn't track you.
Exactly, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, there were some pros to having all of this.
Yeah.
And one of the cons was that your phone initially, it took a while before cordless phones came out.
Uh-huh.
So you were literally locked into one spot in the house where the phone was attached to the wall. And usually it was some inconvenient place, like in the entrance or somewhere where there wasn't exactly a chair or an armchair, somewhere nice for you to sit.
I remember when we had a home phone that had a cord and you would be on the phone for hours and it was like in a corner and all you had was like this little poof to sit
Oh,
on.
yes, I remember those like those cramps I used to get when I try stand up and the pins and needles. Why did we not have a cordless phone?
I don't know. It was just a phone with a cord. I don't know why.
Hang on. Okay, I was recently divorced and poor and practically destitute. That
explains it.
There you go. That makes sense. But it's still, I think it had a slightly longer cord, although not that long.
Not that long, but okay.
Well, now the other thing that was quite a thing in those days, because although you were stuck to one spot, that was one issue. The second issue was that if somebody called you from the outside and you happened to answer the phone, until the person that called you would hang up, even if you put your phone down, you could hang up 10 times, you still, if you would pick it up and they left their phone off the hook, then you would not get dialing tone.
You're being held phone hostage.
That is called phone hostage. And there was not much you could do about it. The other person would have to eventually need to call somebody else, hang up on their side. Otherwise, you were kind of stuck.
Uh-huh.
And then what would happen is every time you picked up the phone, if they were on the other side, you would still be talking to the same person.
So you were held hostage.
So we were held hostage. And this one particular hostage situation that I had actually became quite dramatic. So what happened is we were living in those days, I was still living with my parents. We were living in an area, a suburb of Johannesburg called Lombardy East, which was kind of a middle-class suburb, not particularly affluent, but reasonable middle class. And suddenly the one day, our phone would ring. And the person on the other side didn't speak.
Like nothing.
Like nothing. Silence.
Of the lambs.
Not quite, but almost. More like Star Trek and Darth Vader.
Okay. Oh, so heavy breathing.
Heavy breathing without anyone telling me about my father at any point. I kept waiting for who my father is going to be, but there was no father. And this heavy breathing continued.
That's
And
creepy.
it's creepy. And we would try to put the phone down, and literally, you could have picked it up an hour later, 2 hours later, and you still couldn't make any other phone calls because Mr. Heavy Breather on the other side refused to hang up.
That's so scary.
It was a bit scary and very annoying.
And also, you don't have caller ID, so you have no idea who's actually doing this to you.
You've got absolutely no idea. So the one day I kind of was at my wit's end. And in those days, the house we lived in Lombardy East, my parents used to work very often. It had a library down the road that if we went to the bottom of our garden and we jumped over the wall and then kind of went through this weird passage, we would come to a library. So my sister and I read a lot of books. And one of the phases I went through at some point, I must have been about 12, I must have been about 13. I went through a little bit of a Jane Austen phase.
Okay.
And I used to be reading my books. And I decided, because I couldn't get this guy off the phone, I thought I'm going to try kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And what I said to Mr. Heavy Breather on the other side is I said, listen, I cannot sit here on the phone all day idly, but if you like, I'm busy reading a book. And it was Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, nice.
So I told this person on the line, Mr. Darth Vader.
Yeah. Mr. Darth Vader.
So we'll just call him Mr. D. I told Mr. D that, listen, I actually assumed it was a Mr. And I'll tell you why. Well,
no, what woman is going to do this?
Exactly. Let's just say that the breathing sounded too much like Darth Vader. It wasn't like a Princess Leia vibe. It was more Darth Vader. And
Princess Leia?
Yes.
Princess Leia, Mom.
Princess Leia.
Big fan.
Princess, I kind of put myself into the role. But okay. So I started reading and I told Mr. D that, listen, I'm actually going to read a chapter to you. And when I finish the chapter, I would really appreciate it if you put the phone down. And I started reading to him. And interestingly enough, we were talking at the time about Mr. Darcy.
Uh-huh.
And I would read to him, and then I'd say to him, we're almost at the end of the chapter. I'd get to the end of the chapter, and I'd say, okay, so now we have to go. And I'd say goodbye, and he said nothing. I would put the phone down, and then when I'd pick up the phone again, I'd have dialing tone.
So basically what you're telling me is that you were hosting your own podcast way back in the day.
Well, it was more like...
An audiobook.
An audiobook, thank you. That's what I was doing. I was doing my own audiobook. I tried to put in good expression, and at some point, this went on for months. I kid you not.
Wow.
We had finished Pride and Prejudice. We moved on to Sense and Sensibility. I was reading away.
If you kept that up, you could have made a killing. You know how many people read audiobooks these days as a job?
I just didn't know that at the time. I should have. That might be something I can branch into now.
Yeah.
The other thing was that everyone in the family also started realizing that we had this prank caller. And they realized that the only way to get him off the phone is to actually let Leah talk to him.
That's so funny.
So the minute someone would answer the phone and hear silence, they would call me, Leah, it's for you.
That's so crazy.
So this dude actually knew my name as well. The one thing I realized, though, because once out of the entire time that I was on the phone with him, and this came near the end, I think he was getting tired of Jane Austen and he decided that his prank calling has to end. He was hoping I would move on to, I don't know, Tolstoy or something a little bit more appropriate for him. I think he was finding my books a little bit too girly. And he turned around and he spoke. And what he said was his version of a poem. And I'm really very clear that this man, I might have been able to go into audiobooks. He couldn't go into poetry. He turned around and said, your eyes are as blue as the clear blue sea. I know you, but you don't know me. And I listened to this and I thought, okay, Anyone that knows me knows my eyes are not blue. The only other...
Thank goodness he doesn't know what your eyes look like. It'd be so creepy if he was describing your features.
Exactly. It would be very creepy. The only creepy thing is that the only person in that house with blue eyes was my grandmother. So maybe he was actually wanting to talk to her, and maybe she could have read to him in Greek, and that would have been fun.
Can you imagine Yaya Vagelia in English trying to do something?
So now let's go on to Yaya Vagelia. My prank caller was not dealing with my taste in books. He was not interested in those particular classics, so off he went. And my grandmother, Yaya Vagelia, because she was at home most of the day, she was actually our telephone operator.
Again, she was in charge of the phone.
She was in charge of the phone, and she was always first line. Now, one of the things that modern people get to do these days is some guy or some person annoys you, upsets you. So what can you do to them?
You slam the phone on them.
You don't slam your cell phone anyway. You block them.
Oh,
you
yeah.
ghost them.
Well, imagine slamming the Nokias. Like, you could slam a Nokia back
You could
in the day.
definitely slam a Nokia, especially the 3330.
Yeah.
That was the slammable one. But going back to the good old days of the 70s and 80s, that was really satisfying. Even if you couldn't get the other person off the phone, if you were the one that had called, just that sensation of taking that receiver off your ear and ramming it down with all your might is extremely satisfying.
I honestly think we should bring those kinds of phones
Just
back.
for that.
Just for that.
Yes, but you've got all these other tools now. You can block them. You can tell Apple that...
Blocking, like, you press a button. It's so unsatisfying.
It's unsatisfying, but the satisfaction comes in when that person doesn't call you back again.
I guess so.
So back to my phone operator.
Okay.
Yaya Vagelia. What would happen again in those days? Like now, if you don't want to talk to someone, you can silence the phone. You can send them an automated message saying, sorry, can't talk now, call you back later, or call you in a bit. In those days, there wasn't such a thing. But there were definitely times where you had either handed your phone number out to someone, or you knew there was some guy that was going to try and call you and you really weren't in the mood to talk to him. So your only recourse was, as the phone was ringing, before anyone in your house had answered it, was to scream out at the top of your lungs, I'm not here. If it's for me, I'm not here. Or I'm in the bath, or I'm walking the dog. And my grandmother would dutifully pick up the phone, and in her politest voice, and she really was trying to be polite, she would say, Leah, not here. And then she would slam the phone down.
Oh, that's so funny.
Now, when I say she was being polite, she really was, because once I remember when we were all out and it was getting late and we were worried because our dogs were at home and they hadn't been fed yet. And she called our housekeeper to ask her to please feed the dogs for us.
I think you've told me this before.
And so what she did is she called up and the lady answered the phone and she said, Gladys, you eat the dog. And there was silence on the other side. And I was like screaming, feed the dog, don't eat the dog, do not eat the dog or any of the dogs, please. So my grandmother, she actually wasn't trying to be rude. She was saying the way she could say things in English, Leah, not here. But then I could see the satisfaction she'd get from slamming the phone down.
It is a fun, like, it's because it's a physical thing that you're doing afterwards. So
yes.
You get out the frustration or the adrenaline of answering a phone call.
Absolutely. And the poor grandmother, because she had to keep things on track, because what might be happening is while the phone was ringing, I might be screaming, I'm not here, while my sister Cleo is screaming, I'm in the shower, or I'm screaming, I'm walking the dog, and she's screaming, I'm not here. And my grandmother had to coordinate all of that and be able to tell the person on the other side. Now, sometimes, Jo, it would get super complicated because let's say there were two guys that might potentially call you.
Ooh.
And the one you want to talk to and the other one you don't want to talk to. So what you would have to try do is get Yaya or my grandmother on the other side to say, who's speaking, please? Who's speaking? And then she would try repeat the word that she had heard, and we'd be standing there trying to like motion with our hands, whether this one yes or that one no. So we'd kind of do this like slit throat, we're dying if you don't want the person, or like this kind of a happy
dance.
belly dance when you want her to know that this is the guy that you actually want to speak to.
It's so funny.
So it was a good system until it wasn't.
Okay, tell me
So
more.
we had one situation which was really, really awful. Well, I thought was really, really awful.
Oh no.
I still feel so guilty about it and still feel so awful about it, where the phone rang and I wasn't expecting a call from anybody. So I was very curious to ask who it was. And so I kind of motioned to my gran with our own little family sign language that find out who's on the phone. So the person asked to speak to Leah, and my grandmother, in her politest English, would say, "Who's speaking, please?" And the person answered, and my grandmother couldn't pick up what the person's name was. So she asked them again, "Who?" Still couldn't pick up who it was. After her third attempt of who, I just nodded my head and did the belly dance and thought, you know what, let me just speak to this unknown person. And I will ask them who's speaking when I get to the phone.
Yeah, okay.
So I get to the phone and the person says hello and I ask who's speaking. And in the beginning, I kind of thought, oh, my grandmother just can't hear what they're saying. And the person says their name, which is now they've been asked by my grandmother 3 times already, and we haven't gotten the name. I asked them twice, still couldn't get the name, and got to a point where I was too embarrassed to ask another time, which would have been my 3rd time and the 6th time in a row that this poor person, this poor guy, had said his name. So I did what a lot of us do sometimes. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to keep this guy talking.
Yeah.
At the time, I must have been.
And you hope that you can like.
Exactly. And while he's talking, I'm going to eventually start picking up.
Yeah, who I'm talking
exactly, based on the conversation. So at the time, I must have been about 15 or 16. And the person on the line was obviously feeling a little bit shy as well and a little bit intimidated because the only conversation they had was they blurted out once, I had no idea who I was talking to, is, "Will you please come to my matric dance with me?"
Ooh.
And I was.
What's your matric dance, by the way, for anyone who's not South African? It's like a prom or your senior year dance. Like the dance that like all the final year students get together for.
Yes.
And they usually at the school and everyone dresses up in like fancy dresses and their suits and.
That's right. It's almost like the going away ball of the final year of school.
Yeah.
So it's quite a big deal.
It's quite a big deal, yeah.
And then the person on the line turns around and says to me, "Please let me know at school as soon as possible. Bye now," and just puts the phone down.
And you're like, oh my word.
I stayed on the phone hoping he's going to pick it up again and say something else. And there was nothing. I got my dialing tone instantly.
That I wouldn't even know what to do.
I swear to you, I arrived at school the next day. I think about it now and I get all stressed out. So the dance was probably about 6 weeks away when this person had asked me. And I needed to know who the person was before I said yes or no, before I even went through
Otherwise, who are you supposed to go up to? I feel like, though, for their part, I get that you would be nervous, but, like, surely they could have found you since they knew who you were and, like, been like, oh, have you thought about it? Like, what, in the meantime, not just, like, wait there thinking, oh, I'm being rejected.
Yes, well, they also hadn't given me their phone number, because maybe I could have done a reverse search. It would have taken me about 14 years to go through the whole phone book looking for phone numbers, because maybe I could have written a computer program at the time that will like analyze the phone. But I had absolutely no idea. So I would arrive at school and I'd be walking around almost like Sherlock Holmes, like looking around for clues. Who's looking at me weirdly? And I'd look at someone, I'd think, is it him? And I'd think, oh, it can't be him. He's got a girlfriend. Is it him? No, it can't be. And I was going through this. I was driving myself crazy, totally crazy. I still would have, in the meantime, once the dear soul had actually asked me and I knew who it was, I would still have to navigate asking my parents if I could go, which was another story altogether. But I had no idea. And in the interim, because I was 15 at the time, what the school would do is for this very fancy dance, they would pick 7 girls and 7 boys that were in grade 10 at the time.
Yeah, so 15 to 16 years
And,
old.
and those people it was a great honor to be chosen to be a waiter or a waitress for this dance.
Yeah.
And these dances always had a theme.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I don't know,
Like my matric dance was like Oscars themed.
Oscars theme.
So we had like, it was all like, you had like, our entrance had like fake gold statues
and a red carpet.
and like we had a projector playing. I was part of my dance committee, and we had a projector playing like famous movie scenes in the background, and we had little napkins in the shape of bow ties. It was a whole thing.
Now I'm trying to think what mine was. Believe it or not, I've forgotten what mine was, but I remember that year that I was asked. I remember that clearly because I was a waitress and the theme was Arabian Nights.
Yeah.
So we all wore kind of an outfit that looked a bit like Jasmine.
Yeah, there was the one where I was like a waitress for it was like Greek gods or goddesses. Like we would dress basically like in togas.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then my actual like final year dance, it was a fairy tale theme, like fairy garden. That's because
So what did the waitresses wear?
that one was a different school, so we didn't have waitresses.
Okay.
But like
okay.
you know, they had like all fairy lights everywhere. It was all supposed to be like a magical forest vibe.
Okay. Yes. I mean, those dances are quite a big deal.
Yeah.
And I then was chosen in the interim to be a waitress, which was a great honor.
I didn't know they picked like so few people.
They picked very few people. So you were considered like, ooh, I'm of the popular bunch if I get chosen. Plus, it would mean that you would be able to
actually go to the dance.
Go to the dance and kind of try and make sure that you got to serve anyone that you thought was good looking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I needed at some point to let this dear soul know that I couldn't go to the dance with him. And I literally had no idea where to begin. And time was ticking. And I realized that once I say no to this person, they then need to, in this very short period of time, find someone else.
Yeah.
And
which is stressful because I've had that as well. I had someone for one of the dances I went to who ditched me like last minute but didn't let me know, so I had to like scramble to find someone.
That was
it was a bit of a conundrum. Thankfully, like I had someone who asked me to their dance, like who went to a different school, so we just coordinated that we went to each other's. But still, it was like it's a bit of a rush to then find someone, because if you're at a table where all your friends are bringing people that are not from the school, you don't want to be the only one on the table that doesn't have anyone.
Yes, no, I mean and you feel shocking at your dance. I mean, it's like what you see in all the American movies, the senior prom.
Yeah.
I mean, who goes to senior prom alone? And what if I'm the cause of someone going alone?
Yeah.
Anyway, 2 weeks before the dance, this guy finally approached me and said, so, and by that stage, I had even practically forgotten that I had been asked. I was
shame the poor.
And I said, so, and he said, are you able to make it? And then suddenly I realized, oh my word, it's him. The fact that I'm still in contact with this person and he still speaks to me today
is a testament to how nice he thinks
it's
you are.
a testament or a testament to how nice he is. Exactly. I mean, I felt evil, but anyway.
Shame. I think also at that, because of the way communication was, maybe he should have come up to you a bit sooner to say, have you, like, maybe a week after the phone call is what I think what I would have wanted someone to do if they were calling me.
He should have. The poor guy was probably eyeing me out, wondering when I'm going to approach him. And how could I? Till this day, the guy does not know that the reason why I delayed telling him was because I literally had no clue who he was.
Unless he listens to this podcast.
Unless he listens to podcasts. But I refuse to reveal his identity.
No, that's secret.
It reminds me, though, of another incident where at the same school, I was a little bit young for my grade at school.
Mm-hmm.
Because they used to take people who were born from July that year, the school intake, until June the following year.
Yeah.
So if you were born in June of the following year, you would be the youngest in your class.
Okay.
So the year that, for example, that everyone else in your class is turning 6, you would still be 5.
Interesting.
until halfway through the next year where you would suddenly turn 6.
It's a bit of a confusing system.
It was a confusing system, which they changed it
Yeah.
subsequently, probably because it caused so much confusion.
I just don't understand. It's like, if the year is from January to December, why are we doing it from July to June? Like, just figure out your stuff.
Maybe they were trying to include the European or the American system together with the South African system.
If they're doing the American system, then just start at September to May, or I don't know when the American year ends. I just know it starts in September.
I think it does end in May or June.
But they have the summer off. But
They have the summer off.
Americans, feel free to tell us how it is.
Exactly. But in South Africa, that wouldn't be summer. So it made no sense.
It would be winter.
It would be winter. So I don't know what their story
Yeah.
was. But I happened to still be 12 at the time. Everyone else in my grade had turned 13, and I was 12. And a guy physically came up to me at school. He wasn't the most popular or one of these hot jock guys.
Yeah.
He was just a regular guy. I would say maybe slightly more on the quiet side.
Okay.
And he approached me one day while I was sitting there after school and said, "Hey, Leah, how would you feel about going to my matric dance with
Oh,
me?"
my word.
And I thought, wow, this is going to be amazing. I can't wait to get home and tell my parents that I'm going to go to matric dance. I was starting to plan outfits in my head,
Yeah.
and I couldn't see anything wrong with it.
And like now looking like me now thinking about that like a 17, 18-year-old is going like asking a 12-year-old to a dance.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, ew. Like, what
Yeah,
are
but
you doing?
in this poor guy, and I'm not going to reveal his name either, in this poor dear man's defense, he might have thought I was 13.
Look, and I know you're pretty awesome. I don't like I
Oh,
don't
thanks, Joe. Is it just because we're doing the podcast?
No, Mom, it's a completely objective opinion.
Okay, Joe, what do you want? What do you want? You want a car? You want an apartment?
I want more subscribers to this
Oh,
podcast,
more subscribers.
please.
Okay. I don't know if I can arrange that, but I'll do my best.
Yeah, you guys listening can arrange that, and we'd really appreciate it.
We would. So I eventually went home and decided that my parents are going to be so proud of me and so thrilled.
Can you just imagine if I came up to you and said, like, "Hey, Mom, someone asked me to the matric dance, and I was in grade 6," because I would be the age that you were.
Only when I had children that were that age did I go back and kind of justify my parents' reaction. I was bursting to tell my parents about this. And when I told them, the only thing they didn't do is literally kill me, like smother me with a pillow and throw me out the house. They were horrified. My mom, in her dramatic way, was screaming, "My daughter's become a slut." And my dad was saying, "He cannot believe this. It's disgusting behavior." And I thought, like,
What's the big deal,
what's
Mom?
the big deal?
You just don't understand.
That's what I thought. He just didn't understand, you know?
Yeah.
You just don't get me.
Yeah, honestly, parents, you just don't get it.
Well, needless to say, I didn't go with a dear soul.
Oh, thank goodness. Can you imagine?
I ended up not going with any of the people that had asked me for various weird reasons, and most of the weird reasons being my parents.
At least it's consistent.
At least it is consistent.
So on that note, Mom, what are the life lessons that we can take from this story?
Okay, well, I would say lesson number 1 is it's obviously not ideal to use your non-English speaking grandmother as your answering service or PA. Lesson number 2 is everybody needs to read because books can serve more purposes than just
entertainment.
The other lesson learned is that parents see things ever so slightly different to the way children see things.
Yeah, for good reason.
Yes. And on that note, I think I should go ahead and talk about gratitude.
Yeah, let's talk about what we're grateful for.
So I'm very grateful for my grandmother who took all our nonsense and all our weird hand signals and dances and answered the phone for us.
Yeah.
I am, though, very grateful for advances in technology.
For Caller ID.
I'm grateful for cell phones.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that none of my children were asked to a prom before they turned 16.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that the closest I came to a fake Darth Vader was on a phone and not in person.
Yeah. And that you don't have to deal with that Darth Vader anymore.
And then I don't have to deal with it. And Also, guys, I'm really, really grateful to you guys who take the time to listen to the podcast. I
Yes,
hope you've
same.
enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed. It's been really fun listening to the story. It's a story that I've kind of heard before, but maybe not all of it.
It was fun to tell the
I
story.
love it.
And please, guys, subscribe
Yes, please.
either on Apple Podcasts,
on Spotify, and we've also now just made a YouTube channel for people who don't have Spotify or Apple and want a different way to listen to the podcast. So you can subscribe to us there as well. And we're looking forward to next week, to our next episode, and we hope to see you there.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
I